Hi everyone. So I'm super excited today because this is my first video in the month of March, and March is my birthday month. And if I would tell you, let me just let you into a little secret. Not only is it my birthday, but on the 29th of this month, I'm going to be 50. Yes, I said it, the big 50 is finally here. I'm super excited. I am super grateful. I mean, God has been good. He has been faithful. I have loved where I have been with all the trials, all the pains. I've loved who He has helped me to become. And more importantly, I'm really looking forward to the rest of the journey that I know unfolds from the 29th of March. So, yeah, did I hear someone say you don't look a day over 25? Thank you so much. I agree. Anyhow, so last time I did say that I was going to be speaking to us about something I called two sides of the same lawn. And let me just preface, and I want to show you a graphic, but before I get there, I want to tell you that this is a photograph that I took by myself. So my husband and I were taking a walk in our estate, and when I saw this visual, I literally had to stop. I pulled out my phone, and honestly, God just began to minister to me. And perhaps also, before I show you this picture, let me tell you that. So this estate, we had moved in, say, a couple of years earlier. We were actually tenants in someone else's property. And then, by the grace of God, this property came out a beautiful corner piece that had this absolutely fabulous, nice green carpet grass lawn in front. I have always wanted carpet grass. So it's a testimony for another day how we were able to buy that property. But that's the house I live in today. And then we moved in. And as you know, it's one thing to have what you've always wanted, is another thing entirely to nurture it and keep it in the same state. So of course, as the season changed, what then happened was that this grass began to turn brown. And, you know, at some point, it didn't look anything like the lawn that I had, you know, so loved, that made me say, hey, this is the house we want to buy. So right now I'm going to pause, because I want you to have this image, this very vivid picture in your mind as we go through the rest of this conversation today. And of course, you know already that even as I'm talking about carpet grass and a lawn, I'm actually speaking to you about your life. So when you see this picture and everything else I'll say thereafter, I want you to think about your life, and then let's have a conversation, okay? So do you see why I found that video to be so striking? I mean, literally, it was the same pavement. We're walking in the estate, like I said, it was the same stretch of grass, but you could see the difference very clearly between the part that was a lush green and the other part that was just a very dry, unattractive brown, right? The exact same piece of lawn. In fact, it looked almost like someone had taken a ruler and drawn a very straight line to divide the two sides, okay? But let me go back to my own home for a bit and just share a few things with you. So, you know, my husband traveled at some point, and he bought a sprinkler system. You know, literally, we've been talking about this grass off and on a few times, but I mean, to be fair, I had kind of gotten used to it. I mean, I barely saw it for the few minutes that I would walk into my car on my way to work. And of course, a few minutes coming out of my car, you know, at the end of the day. So at some point, it just became an irritation that I tolerated. But he traveled and, you know, he bought the sprinkler system. He brought it. He showed me. We were both excited about it. And we said, okay, tomorrow we're going to get someone to install it. But guess what? We packed it back in the suitcase, put the suitcase outside of the door of our bedroom. And it sat there for, I wish I could say weeks, but it was actually months, while the grass stayed dry. Kind of makes you wonder, when you think about your life, that what are the things that you literally have in your hands? Either they've been provided for you, or you've actually gone and acquired them. Maybe some course you did, some information, some relationship, some connection, and you've done absolutely nothing with it. I mean, it's literally been there. Anyhow, as I stared at these two pieces of lawn, so to speak, in front of me, one thing that was very clear was that essentially nothing was dividing them. That essentially they were both working with exactly the same thing. And what do I mean by that? That they had the same soil. And in that same soil, the same nutrients were in there. So they were starting with exactly the same thing, except that one person was nurturing their lawn. Nurturing simply by watering that little extra that the grass required to thrive, and the other person was not. And let me put out a caveat first of all to say that, hey, I really don't know whether the other neighbor was out of the country or whatever. I'm not talking about my neighbors. I'm just using the example of the grass to show us how sometimes in life we start in exactly the same place, but it's just going to take that little extra to make a difference, okay? The truth is that if you're from a well-to-do home, it's not a guarantee of success. You still have to do that extra. There are many people who have come from well-to-do homes and done absolutely nothing with their lives. And there's some other people who have come from well-to-do homes and just built on additionally beyond what it was that they were given to work with. In the same way, a painful truth, and I'm not trying to be insensitive to whatever circumstances anyone grew up in, but the painful truth is that for people who perhaps grow up in poor and difficult environments, there are those who are going to choose to simply sit back and gripe and complain about everything that is not working, about the bad hand that they've been dealt. There's some that would even turn to crime. There's some that would just begrudge every other person that seems to have something that is better than theirs. But you know, there are those other sets of people who are going to look at the environment and determine for themselves that they must get out of that place. And we've all heard countless of testimonies of some of the people that we best admire today who started in very dire situations. So my question to you at this point is, are you nurturing the lawn that you have? What are you doing with it? What are you doing with your life? What are you doing with the difficulties? Some of us are in Nigeria, so many things are not working, yes, but in the same Nigeria where things are not working, some people are still thriving. And I'm not talking about people who are corrupt. Some people are literally looking at the difficulties and deciding to press past them, create opportunities, and do great things with their lives. What has your choice been? Okay, so now I said, for instance, that my own lawn was dry, right? So I'm not knocking my neighbors, I repeat. My lawn looked exactly like the other half of the picture. I was not happy with it, but I walked past it anyway. What I didn't realize, and what a lot of us don't realize, is that these little even visual irritations, actually, like in my case, it was stealing from the quality of my life. I mean, I know we like to monetize things, so literally, if I could have monetized those irritations, I would have seen that I was costing myself a lot. And the irony is that I didn't realize also that the same way this lawn kind of stood out in stark contrast, I was sending a possible message to me about the occupant of the house, is exactly the same way perhaps that other people might have been looking at my life and thinking, how would she have this beautiful house and not be looking after the lawn? Maybe she's a careless person, maybe this, maybe that. The truth is, we all tend to make impressions, or form impressions rather, about other people based on the most seemingly mundane things, without realizing the impressions we may be creating about our lives. Impressions which, by the way, sometimes block us from opportunities that are right there, potentially ahead of us. So that day, as I saw that lawn, when I got back, I made up my mind that whatever happened the very next day, my own lawn needed to begin to be nurtured so that it could once again thrive. So I called my facility guy and I said to him, listen, we will need to install this sprinkler system. Now, he was a bit concerned initially because he said, you know, we're not sure whether the water points may be there. We might have to call a plumber to do some piping and all that. But when he did an assessment of the facility, do you know what? The previous occupier of the property had literally already done the connection points. All we needed to do was to just connect the sprinkler and everything began to change. And can I tell you that within 2 days, my grass began to come to life, and within a week to 10 days, I had my lush green lawn all the way back. What am I saying? And why am I sharing this with you? Let me just talk about a few things that I can take from this. First of all is that you and I literally need to do a review of our lives and look at some of the areas where we feel that we're not flourishing and determine for ourselves if perhaps we have become comfortable with those things that we actually have the potential to do something about. If we have become complacent in areas where there is a call for us to come up higher, to press in a bit more. My lawn is just like a type and a shadow of some aspect of your life, some aspect of my life where we have settled. And you know what? Settling is never a good thing when God is actually calling us to the place of vibrancy and flourishing. So ask yourself this. In your workplace, perhaps, have you settled because every time you used to do that little extra, nobody noticed anyway? Have you settled because someone else, maybe your boss, always came in and took all the glory? What is it? I mean, have you stopped reading because you're asking yourself, how does it even help in the job that you're in? Have you stopped trying to learn and grow because you feel, hey, I'm too old for this anyway? Have you stopped trying to upskill because you feel that no other opportunity could possibly open up to you? You've been stuck in this place for like 10, 20 years. Where have you become comfortable with your irritations? Let me tell you something. Maybe because I'm approaching 50. Right? I have been on this journey of self-reflection for a while now and asking myself, just reflecting and looking at what I call my comfort zones and asking how they may be holding me back from my ability to do more, to be more, to impact more. I read something a few years ago that I have never forgotten. I can't remember who said it, but it was a quote that says that complacency will always keep you in mediocrity. And some of you may have heard me say before that I am allergic to mediocrity. You need to be allergic as well. Do this self-reflection and ask yourself if perhaps slowly and surely you're allowing the lawn of your life to turn to that dry lawn, or if you're nourishing it to the degree that it stays nice and verdant. The second thing I want to share is this. Do you remember that I said to you that I already had the sprinkler system? I mean, literally, it sat beside the door I walked past at least 2-3 times a day beside my bedroom door. And at some point, honestly, I wasn't seeing it anymore. Ask yourself, what are those things you don't even see anymore because they have become so familiar? And they're things that actually, if you work them or you work with them, have the potential to change and improve something about your life. So the day we went to install it, like I said also, we then also found out that there was nothing else required. It was almost like a plug and play. I had everything that I needed. And remember, the ground already had the nourishment. So it still had the nutrients. It had everything. All my grass needed was water. Just water to take the nourishments in the ground and put it in a form that it can transmit into the root system. Listen, when you stop and you begin to reflect on the places where you might have settled, you need to become very uncomfortable with anything that looks like less than the best version of you. So let me encourage you. Take some time and reflect and ask yourself, what do I already have? Listen, you must do this exercise. What do I already have? I promise you, you know that scripture that says that God is waiting to be good to you? It is so true. All he's asking, he has made the provision in the soil of your life and the soil of my life. He just needs us to make the right sets of moves to bring everything into alignment for a more abundant outcome. How about you and I just purpose in this season that we're going to shake up a few things and get out of complacency, get out of comfort zones. Work with the things we already have. And please, in saying this, let me remind you, you really need to take the time, because many of the things you already have, they're so familiar that you're not seeing them anymore. Another thing I want to talk about is this. Listen, my facility guy, he said something to me. He said, "Ma'am, so you mean we already had this sprinkler system all this while?" I felt so silly. But it was a good kind of silly, because every once in a while we need to be humbled. We need to be shaken out of this place. So on this journey, I promise you that as you want to step up, you know, you're going to face some people are going to look at you and literally make you feel silly, make you feel small, but it doesn't matter, because you need to stay focused on what it is you're trying to achieve. Look, the Lord is asking you and is positioning, and in some cases repositioning you, so that he can partner with you, take those dry areas of your life and my life and cause them to become more lush. And he's not going to require that you go it alone. I had to get my facility guy. And this is the thing I want to point out, that if you look at it, it's not necessarily that you actually have to do all the work. There are people that will help you on this journey. What is important is that in humility, respectfully, and in honor, you appreciate their own part of the process. If I had been rude to my facility guy, or if I had gotten so upset that I asked him, "Oh, my friend, why should you ask me that question? Leave it." Who would have lost? Certainly not him. I would have lost. So you have to honor the people that will be part of your process in this journey of realignment to bring your life into a place of more shine, more flourish, more impact, more whatever it is, more watering, more nurturing. I want to show you this picture one more time. Okay, now this picture also speaks to something else. The fact that life is about choices. And honestly, you and I are more in control of our choices than we allow ourselves to think. I promise you that even when you think you are limited in your options, what tends to happen is that you've actually not fully examined them. Either, like I said earlier, because you've gotten comfortable with the options you have, or you haven't actually thought through who or what or how you need to press past where you are and what options you think are ahead of you. If you remember the parable of the talents in Luke 19 is also repeated in Matthew 25. We are told about some servants who had masters that gave them all different talents. Some he gave 5, 2, and 1, some 10, and all that. And the story, the parable talks about how the guy who was given 1 did nothing with it. But here's the thing, when he was asked why, he talked about how, his master was mean and all that, and so he just felt, hey, let me preserve this and give it right back to him when he comes back. Think about what I'm saying. This servant had the same master as the others. Exactly the same master, which means if the guy was actually a mean boss, he was mean to everybody. This is the same thing as these two sides of the lawn having exactly the same soil to work with. However, those who were given more literally took the time and made the investments to increase the more that they nurtured, in a sense, what they were given, to add value to it, such that by the time the master came back, this same mean master, they were able to yield a return to him, even though he didn't ask them to necessarily. So this other person chose to do nothing, saying he was afraid and so on. So essentially, this was like him looking at his grass and deciding, well, the soil already has nutrients. I don't have to do anything extra. And that extra cost him in the end. So I'm not sure how you might interpret this in your particular circumstances, and it may not apply to you specifically. But I promise you that honestly, you lose nothing by doing a 360 review of your life, to be sure that you are not the architect in any way of any dryness you may be experiencing. And again, this is in no way to diminish the import of difficulties you may have been facing or be facing currently. But if you can figure it out, I promise you now is as good a time as any for you to try to begin to make the right sets of moves to water your ground, as it were, so that you can see things begin to turn around in the near future and then again over time. So for me, while my grass became verdant, and again within like a 10-day period, I can't really promise you that your life will turn around in a week. That's not the conversation we're having. What I can promise you, however, is that as long as you are diligent, as long as you are consistent, as long as you are staying in faith and trusting God, as long as your simple and obedient submission to a watering process, is in place, right? You will ultimately enjoy the journey and yield the results. And I promise you in the process, make some great new relationships. So when you look at the lawn of your life again, my question to you is it flourishing or is it failing? Listen, and this is the last thing I will say, that nurturing work, the watering of the lawn, requires effort. It requires effort. It requires you to take a few steps. It will be inconvenient. You have to, especially in the dry seasons. You know what it means, especially in a city like Lagos, to come out in the hot sun and start watering your lawn? Or you know what it means in the difficult climate we're in, to expend of your money to pay someone else to do that watering consistently? It will take something out of you. But I promise you that every time you do a little extra in life, every single time, every time you just consistently go above and beyond, you will be blessed. It may not manifest in the same way, but I promise you, your life is always better. It's the two sides, and it's the same lawn. It's the same life we all have. It's the same challenges we all have. Yours may sound different, but a challenge to you may be different from my challenge, but a challenge to me is a challenge nonetheless. Nurture your lawn. Ask God to show you prayerfully what He has that He can offer, or rather that you can bring to the table with what He has already given you, so that going forward, you can see a more lush future, not just for you, but indeed I promise you for your entire generation. I hope this has been worth something to you. I hope you've learned something. Once again, my name is Audrey, counting down to 50, super excited. Keep me in your prayers. I'll be back.